The cafeteria of the human colony school on planet Vora 9 was always full of noise, laughter, and the smell of warm food. But there was always one quiet corner where a little girl named Lena Dalen sat alone. Every day, with her small metal lunchbox in front of her, she didn't mind being alone. She liked to watch people, to notice things others didn't. Her father said she had her mother's eyes, always searching for kindness in a world that had forgotten how to be kind. Outside the wide cafeteria windows, the red sun of Vora 9 burned low over the dusty fields. The light turned everything gold and strange. Humans had lived here for only a few years, and though the colony was growing, fear still walked its halls. It was the fear of aliens, the kind who once fought against humans in the border wars. Children were told stories about them, how they were dangerous, how they could not be trusted. That day, as Lena unwrapped her sandwich, she noticed something she had never seen before. Near the cafeteria door stood a boy, small, thin and trembling. His skin was pale blue, his ears were slightly pointed, and his eyes, large and silver, looked lost and hungry. His uniform was the same as everyone else's, but torn at the sleeve and too big for his fragile frame. He didn't move, he only stared at the floor as if afraid to breathe. The other children noticed him too. Some laughed, others whispered. One boy threw a piece of bread toward him and said loudly, "Look, the alien doesn't even know how to eat." A few laughed. The teachers didn't look up. They were used to pretending not to see. Lena frowned, something inside her hurt. She looked down at her lunchbox. It wasn't much. Some rice, a sandwich, and a piece of fruit. But she remembered her father's words that morning before he left for duty. "Eat well, Lena. Food is fuel for strong humans." She looked back at the boy, who still hadn't moved. His hands were shaking, his lips dry and cracked. Without saying a word, Lena stood up. She carried her lunchbox and walked straight toward him. The room grew quiet. Forks stopped clinking. Whispers turned into silence. The alien boy's eyes lifted, surprised. As Lena stopped in front of him, "Hi," she said softly, her voice kind but steady. "You can sit with me." He didn't answer. His throat moved as if he wanted to speak but couldn't, so she reached out her hand and gently pulled him toward her table. A wave of shocked gasps rippled across the cafeteria. Even the monitors turned to stare. When they sat down, she opened her lunchbox and pushed the sandwich toward him. "You can have it," she said, smiling a little. "I'm not that hungry today." He blinked, hesitant, but then hunger won. He reached for the sandwich and began to eat carefully, as if afraid someone might take it away. Crumbs fell on the table, but Lena didn't mind. She poured him some water from her bottle. He drank it so fast it almost made her laugh. "What's your name?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "Kale," he whispered. The sound was strange, musical, like a soft echo in a cave. "I'm Lena," she said. "It's okay, Kale." "You don't have to be scared." He looked at her then, really looked. And for the first time she saw something in his silver eyes. Relief. Maybe even trust, but not everyone felt the same. Near the back of the cafeteria, an older student muttered, "Her father's gonna kill her for that," another added. "Commander Dalen hates aliens," laughter followed. But Lena pretended not to hear. At that moment, standing just beyond the cafeteria's glass wall, was Commander Arik Dalen, her father, tall and sharp in his Border Patrol uniform, his eyes dark under the scar that cut across his brow. He had come early to pick her up, and what he saw made his chest tighten. His daughter, his little girl, was sharing her food with a starving alien child. For years Arik had fought on the border worlds. He had seen alien ships burn human cities. He had buried friends under red dust. To him, aliens were enemies, not children. He clenched his fists, memories of war flickering behind his eyes. But when he looked closer through the glass, he saw Kale's small hands shaking as he held the sandwich. And he saw Lena smiling, pure, kind, fearless. Something inside Arik began to crack like a wall that had been standing too long. The bell rang, lunch was over, children scattered. Kyle stood up nervously, bowing his head. "Thank you," he said in a soft voice that almost broke. Lena smiled and said, "See you tomorrow." As if it were the most normal thing in the world, Arik turned away before she could see him. His steps heavy, his mind full of storm that night. When Lena came home humming and happy, he sat quietly at the table. Watching her eat dinner, she talked about her day, about how Kale liked her sandwich, about how his eyes shined when he smiled. Arik said nothing, but his hands trembled around his cup. He didn't know it yet, but that simple act of kindness his daughter had done that day would soon change his heart, his beliefs, and the fate of entire worlds. because sometimes a small lunch shared in silence can start a war or end one forever. That night, the red sun had long dipped behind the dunes of Vora 9, and the Dalen household sat in quiet light, the small lamp flickering against the metal walls. Commander Arik Dalen sat at the dinner table, his jaw tight, watching his daughter hum softly while packing her lunch for the next day. She was smiling, completely unaware that her father's heart was a storm. Finally, Arik spoke, his voice low and rough. "Lena," he said. "I went to the school today." Lena looked up, startled. "You did?" she asked, holding her spoon halfway to her mouth. "I saw you," he continued, his eyes sharp. "You were sitting with that alien boy." The spoon clattered onto the table. Lena froze. "His name is Kale," she said softly. "He was hungry." Arik leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "You don't know what they are, Lena," he said. "You don't understand what those things have done." "They're not things," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He's just a child." Her words cut through him like a blade. Arik closed his eyes, memories flashing. Flames rising from a colony base. The screams of soldiers, alien ships blotting out the sun. He saw his friends dying, his comrades burned by plasma fire. The smell of war never left his lungs. He took a deep breath. "You have a good heart, Lena. But kindness can be dangerous," he said quietly. "Aliens. They don't think like us. They use sympathy to get close." Lena frowned, her small hands tightening around her cup. "But you didn't see him, Papa," she said. "He wasn't trying to trick anyone. He was starving. Everyone was laughing at him." Her voice trembled but stayed brave. "You always tell me that strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves." Arik opened his mouth but couldn't answer. She was right. He had taught her that. The same rule he had once lived by before the war changed everything. He sighed heavily and stood up, pacing near the window outside. The 2 moons of Vora 9 hung in the sky like pale eyes. "Promise me you'll stay away from him," he said finally, his tone softer but still firm. "This world isn't safe, and those people, his kind, bring trouble." Lena looked down, silent, the warmth in her face fading. She didn't argue, but she didn't promise either. Later that night, when the house fell asleep, Arik sat alone in his uniform, staring at his old service medal on the table. The faint light glinted off the metal, and his reflection looked older than he remembered. He thought of Kale's face, the hollow cheeks, the frightened eyes, and for a brief second, something inside him felt wrong. He remembered a battle years ago, during the siege of Theta Prime. He had been trapped in a burning bunker, oxygen low, wounded. The last thing he saw before blacking out was a strange silhouette, a tall alien carrying him out. He had never told anyone about that moment, and he had never asked who that alien was. Now, the image of that blue-skinned soldier merged with the little boy in the cafeteria, and it made his heart ache in a way he didn't understand. The next morning, Lena left early, her backpack bouncing as she walked down the dirt path towards school. Arik watched from the window, his chest heavy. He wanted to call out, to tell her he was sorry for shouting, but the words stayed locked in his throat. At the patrol base that day, Arik couldn't focus. Reports blurred before his eyes. His second-in-command, Captain Varys, noticed his silence and smirked. "Something on your mind, Commander?" "Just tired," Arik muttered, though his thoughts were far from rest. "You hear about the refugee kids they're letting into the academy?" Varys said, spitting into his cup. "Should have left them where they came from. One day they'll stab us in our sleep." Arik's jaw tightened. "They're just children," he said quietly. Surprising even himself, Varys laughed. "You're going soft, sir. Next you'll be adopting one." Arik didn't answer, but deep inside, something stirred, a small flicker of doubt toward everything he'd been told to believe. That evening, when he returned home, he found Lena's empty lunchbox on the counter. Beside it was a small drawing. A stick-figure girl and a blue stick-figure boy, both smiling above them, written in her neat handwriting, were the words, "Friends share." Arik stood there, staring at it for a long time, longer than he meant to, his chest tight. He realized his daughter wasn't defying him. She was showing him something he had forgotten. A world without hate. A world that could begin again. But outside, unseen from their small home, a pair of shadowed figures stood watching through the dusty night air. Their helmets glowing faintly red, one of them whispered into a comm device. "Target confirmed, alien child located. Attending human school." The other nodded. "Orders?" "Observe for now," came the reply. The commander doesn't know yet. He's standing in the middle of something much bigger. Inside, Lena slept peacefully, dreaming of sharing her lunch again, while her father sat awake, staring into the dark, unaware that both their lives were about to change forever. Morning light spilled through the gray windows of Vora 9 Academy. Soft and dusty, a new day began like any other. But for Commander Arik Dalen, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Ever since the talk with his daughter, his mind hadn't rested. Her words echoed again and again. He's just a child. Arik tried to bury it under duty, under his uniform and medals, but the image of that small blue-skinned boy eating Lena's sandwich haunted him. So when his patrol duty passed near the academy that day, he stopped pretending it was a coincidence. He stood outside the fence watching quietly. Children played in the dusty yard. Laughter mixed with the wind. And there, at the edge of the playground, was Cale, sitting alone, his knees pulled to his chest, his eyes scanning the ground for crumbs of bread. Then Arik saw something that made his breath catch. A group of older boys surrounded Cale, mocking him. One of them shoved him hard. The alien fell. Dirt on his face, they called him names. Blue Rat, Invader Spawn. But Cale didn't fight back, he just curled tighter, silent. Arik's instincts roared before he could think. He was already through the gate, his boots striking the ground. The bullies froze when they saw the soldier's uniform. "Get back to class," Arik barked, his voice sharp as thunder. The boys scattered like frightened birds. Cale looked up slowly, dust and tears streaking his face. "Thank you," he whispered. Arik knelt beside him, his tone softer now. "You shouldn't let them treat you like that." Cale shook his head. "It doesn't matter," he said in a trembling voice. "They don't know who I am." Something about the way he said it made Arik pause. "And who are you?" he asked carefully. The boy hesitated, glancing around as if afraid someone might hear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small broken pendant. Its chain twisted, but the symbol carved into it shimmered faintly in the sunlight. A pair of wings wrapping around a star. Arik's eyes widened. He knew that crest. He had seen it once. Long ago, on the battlefield of Inthar, carved into the armor of the alien family that had saved his life. Cale's voice was barely a whisper. "My family is gone," he said. "They said humans killed them. But my mother told me before she died that not all humans are bad." He looked up, his silver eyes shining with tears. "She told me one day, someone would remember the truth." Arik felt the world tilt, his pulse thudding in his ears. He remembered the night on Theta Prime. How he'd been pulled from the wreckage by alien arms, carried to safety through the fire. He'd never known their names, never thanked them, and now, here was their child, starving in a human school, mocked by everyone, including him. He swallowed hard. "Your mother. She saved humans once," he said, his voice low. Cale nodded slowly. "She said she saved a soldier with a scar over his eye." Arik's hand rose to his face without thinking. His fingers brushed the old scar that ran from brow to cheek. He froze, his breath catching in disbelief. It couldn't be, it was him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them seemed to vanish. Only the wind whispered across the dusty field. Then Cale said quietly, "She told me, if I ever meet someone with her pendant, to trust them." He pressed the broken pendant into Arik's gloved hand. "Now it belongs to you." Arik looked down at the symbol glowing faintly in his palm, his throat tightening. "No," he said gently, pushing it back. "It belongs to both of us." From the distance, the school bell rang, calling the children inside. Kyle stood slowly, his small frame shaking. "Thank you, Commander," he said, bowing his head. Arik didn't reply. He only watched the boy walk away, each step heavy with loneliness. His heart felt torn between past and present, duty and truth. That night, Arik sat at his desk. Staring at the pendant again, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was no coincidence. He opened his old military files, searching through battle reports, but every record about the Inthar family had been deleted. Only one note remained, terminated, classified, no survivors. But Cal was alive, which meant someone had lied. Someone powerful. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples when a faint knock sounded on the door. Lena peeked in, holding a glass of water. "You're still up," she said softly. "You were thinking about Cale again, weren't you?" Arik smiled faintly. "You see too much." She grinned. "You taught me to look deeper." He nodded slowly, his voice quiet. "Yes. Maybe it's time I do the same." When she left, Arik looked once more at the pendant on his desk. then at the stars beyond the window, each one flickering like an unanswered question. He didn't know what was waiting out there, but he knew one thing for certain. His daughter's kindness had uncovered something far bigger than either of them could imagine, and far away in the shadows of the government tower, a group of men in dark uniforms watched a flickering hologram of Kale at school. One of them said coldly, "If the commander gets too close, erase them both." The room fell silent as the stars outside kept shining, unaware that one child's friendship had just lit the spark that could shake an entire galaxy. The night skies of Vora 9 glowed faintly red as Commander Arik Dallin sat alone in his office at the Patrol Command Center. The dim light from the terminal cast pale lines across his face, deepening the scar that ran over his eye. On the desk before him lay the broken pendant, its faint symbol pulsing with a strange inner light. He had stared at it for hours, unable to forget Kale's trembling voice. "My mother said one day someone would remember." Those words gnawed at him. They didn't sound like the words of a liar or an enemy. They sounded like truth, the kind that frightened powerful people. Arik's instinct screamed for him to stop, but the soldier in him, the man who'd lived through lies and war, needed to know. He slid the pendant aside and activated his secure access key. The terminal hummed to life. Blue code filled the screen. He typed commands only high-ranking officers knew, bypassing layer after layer of classified security. "Access denied, level Omega clearance required." Flashed the warning. Arik frowned. Omega clearance was restricted to the High Council itself, the level used only for war crimes. Or cover-ups. He wasn't supposed to see this, but he couldn't stop now. His fingers moved faster, tracing backdoor routes through forgotten command lines he'd used in the early wars. The old habits came alive in him. Finally, the lock opened. The screen blinked and files flooded in. He scrolled past hundreds of reports until one file caught his eye. Operation Glass Veil Incident Inthar System. He clicked it open. The images that filled the screen made his blood run cold. Photographs of the Inthar family, Kale's family, marked, treated as collaborators, terminated for treason. But attached audio logs told a different story. Human officers begging them to hand over an experimental quantum core the aliens had developed for peaceful energy. When they refused to weaponize it, they were executed. Their deaths framed as enemy casualties. Arik leaned back, jaw tightening. "Executed. For protecting peace," he whispered, his throat dry. Then his name appeared in the mission logs. Survivor extraction, Arik Dallin. Rescued during evacuation by alien civilian forces. His hand trembled as he realized it. Those weren't enemy soldiers who'd saved him all those years ago. It was Kale's mother and father. He closed his eyes, shame flooding him. For years he had cursed their kind, and now he discovered his life was built on their mercy. A soft knock broke the silence. Arik quickly minimized the screen, his second in command. Captain Varys stepped in, smirking. "Working late again, Commander?" "Just reviewing old files," Arik said calmly. Though his voice betrayed a hint of tension, Varys walked closer, glancing around. "Strange. I heard the system flagged a security breach," he said, his tone too casual. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Arik's eyes narrowed. "Why would I?" Varys shrugged. "Because I heard you've been asking about that alien boy, the one at your daughter's school." Arik stood slowly. "You've been monitoring me?" The captain smirked. "Not me, Commander, the Council. They don't like when old heroes start digging in old graves." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Do yourself a favor, forget that alien. Forget the Enthar name." Then he left, his boots echoing down the metal corridor. Arik waited until the door shut, then reopened the file. He downloaded everything onto a small encrypted chip and slipped it into the pocket inside his jacket. If the Council had covered up war crimes, he couldn't trust anyone anymore. Meanwhile, at the academy, Lena was having her own trouble. When she opened her locker that morning, her lunchbox was missing, and scrawled across the metal in black ink were the words, "Traitor Lover." Her eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them quickly. Kyle saw it from across the hall, his silver eyes dark with sadness. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to make trouble for you." She shook her head, forcing a smile. "It's not your fault, Kale. They just don't understand yet." He looked down, his small hands tightening around the straps of his worn backpack. "I wish I could tell you everything," he said quietly, "but if I do, bad people will come." That evening, as the twin sun set, Arik arrived home, still wearing his uniform. the chip burning like fire in his pocket. He saw Lena sitting on the floor trying to clean her lunchbox that someone had thrown in the mud. He knelt beside her, helping her wipe it clean. "Who did this?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." Arik looked at her. Really looked. Her gentle face, her eyes so much like her mother's, and he felt the weight of everything, his guilt, his lies, his anger, all pressing down. "Lena," he said quietly, "if someone hurts you because of that boy, you tell me." She nodded, but before she could speak, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air. The house scanners blinked red. An unauthorized signal was sweeping the area. Arik's soldier instincts kicked in. He grabbed his weapon and peered out the window. Across the dusty street, two black armored agents stood under the dim light, scanning devices in hand, their visors glowing faintly crimson. One turned toward the Dalen house and whispered into a comm link. "Target confirmed, both subjects inside." Arik pulled Lena close and whispered, "Get your coat now," his voice calm but urgent. He didn't know how they found him, but he knew what came next. He'd seen too many purges, too many silences covered by official lies, and now he was part of the secret they were trying to bury. As he led Lena through the back door into the night, he glanced once more at the pendant glowing faintly in his pocket, a promise he didn't fully understand yet. But he knew one thing with burning clarity. If the council wanted to erase the truth, they'd have to go through him first and far away. Deep within the council's dark chambers, a voice crackled through the comm line. "The commander has accessed the Enthar files. Proceed with containment protocol." The answer came cold and final. "Eliminate all witnesses, starting with the alien child." The storm came without warning. The skies over Vora 9 boiled black. Lightning cracked across the colony domes as cold rain slammed against the rooftops. But it wasn't a natural storm. Every soldier knew the sound of drops hiding footsteps, the rhythm of engines masked beneath thunder. Inside the small refugee dormitory on the edge of the settlement, Kale couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, clutching a small data crystal, his mother's last message, the one she had told him to protect with his life. He stared at it, unsure if it was time to use it. His instincts whispered danger. Then he heard it, the low hum of engines too steady to be wind. A sharp flash of red light flickered through the rain. Scanning beams swept across the dorms. Kale's heart froze. Through the window he saw them, black armored soldiers moving in formation, the council's inquisitors, their visors glowing crimson. They were here. He jumped to his feet and ran down the corridor, pounding on doors. "Wake up! They've come!" His small voice trembled but carried through the hall. Children woke crying, teachers shouted in panic. Alarms began to wail. Outside, the inquisitors kicked open doors, dragging refugees out into the storm. One shouted into a comm, "Target is a blue juvenile male. Approximate age 10, bring him in alive." Kale turned a corner and froze. A soldier stood at the end of the hall, blaster aimed. "There you are," the man said coldly. Kale backed away, fear flooding his chest, but before the soldier could fire, a blinding flash cut through the hallway. The wall behind him exploded in sparks, smoke filled the air, and a familiar voice shouted, "Move, kid!" Kale turned. Commander Arik Dalen stood there in full combat armor, rain dripping from his shoulders, blaster smoking, his scarred face hard as steel behind him. Lena clutched a small flashlight, her eyes wide but fearless. "Papa," she cried, running toward him. "They're everywhere." "I know," he said, pulling her close. "We're getting out." Kale stared in shock. "You came for me?" Arik met his gaze. "Your mother once came for me," he said. "Now it's my turn." They ran through the corridors as the sound of boots thundered behind them. Arik fired down the hall, stunning two soldiers. Energy bolts lighting up the narrow space, smoke filled the air. Kyle coughed, his small hand gripping Lena's tightly. "This way," Arik shouted, kicking open a maintenance door. They stumbled into the rain-soaked courtyard, alarms blaring across the colony. Searchlights swept through the storm. Drones buzzed overhead. Arik guided them toward an old supply hangar near the scrapyard. "We can lose them underground," he said, pulling a lever that opened a hidden panel in the floor. A dark tunnel led downward, the smell of rust and oil rising. They climbed inside just as a voice shouted from behind, "Commander Dalen!"
"Stand down!"
"You're aiding an alien fugitive!" Arik turned and fired, his blast hitting the soldier's shoulder, sending him spinning into the mud. "Then I'm guilty," he growled, sealing the hatch inside the tunnel. It was dark and narrow, water dripping from pipes. Their footsteps echoed in the hollow space. Lena clung to her father's arm. Where are we going? Someplace safe, he said. The old mining tunnels under the East Ridge. No scanners work there. Cale looked up, shivering. You'll be hunted for this, Arik glanced at him. Then I'll make it worth it. They moved deeper, but as they reached the end of the tunnel, the faint light from above revealed something. A cracked old cargo shuttle buried beneath the scrapyard. Rusted but intact. She still flies, Arik murmured. Pressing the ignition panel, the engines coughed, then roared to life outside. The Inquisitors arrived seconds too late. The hangar doors split open, and the ship blasted upward into the storm. The thunder swallowed its roar as it vanished into the black clouds. Inside the cockpit, Lena sat beside Cale, her hands trembling. We did it, she whispered. Arik didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the radar, red blips already forming behind them. Not yet, he said. They'll chase us, Cale turned toward him, his small voice calm despite the fear. Commander, they want the truth, don't they? Arik nodded, jaw tight. Yes, and we're going to show it to the whole galaxy, he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out the data chip he'd taken from the archives. This file proves everything, what they did to your family, and how they lied. Cale looked at the chip, then at the small crystal hanging from his neck. My mother's crystal. It connects to that, he said. Together they can open the message. Arik's eyes widened. Then we have the key. Suddenly the ship jolted, alarms blared. Lena screamed as a bolt of plasma tore past the hull. Inquisitor drones had found them. Hold on! Arik shouted, steering hard into a lightning cloud. The sky turned white. Static filled the cabin. A blast rocked the ship, warning lights flashed. Cale grabbed Lena's hand, his small voice breaking. I'm sorry. This is my fault. No, she said fiercely. You're my friend, Arik gritted his teeth, flipping switches. We're not dying today, he muttered. The engines whined, sparks flew. Then the ship dropped into a deep atmospheric tunnel, disappearing from radar. Behind them, the pursuing fleet spread out. Searching, rain fell heavier, washing the colony clean, but not its sins far above in the Council command ship. Captain Vera stared at the tracking screen and whispered, He's gone rogue. Just like they said he would. Should we continue pursuit? His aide asked. Vera smirked. Of course. But don't kill them yet, he said coldly. Let him think he escaped the farther he runs. The bigger the trap. Meanwhile, deep in the storm, Arik's ship flew into the darkness, battered but alive. The three of them silent in the hum of the engines. They didn't know where they were headed, but they all knew there was no turning back. For the first time in years, Arik felt something burning in his chest. Not hate. Not fear, but purpose. He looked at Cale and Lena and whispered, We'll make them see the truth. And in the shadowed stars ahead, the future waited, bright, dangerous, and unforgiving. The stars looked like frozen tears outside the shuttle window. Endless, cold, and quiet after the chaos of the raid. Silence filled the small ship. Only the hum of the engines broke the stillness. Commander Arik Dalen sat in the pilot's seat, his eyes fixed on the navigation display, while Lena and Cale huddled in the back, wrapped in old thermal blankets. They had escaped the Council's net, but barely. The ship's hull was scarred. Fuel was low and their transponder was fried. They were ghosts now, hunted across every human-controlled sector. Lena's soft voice broke the silence. Papa, where are we going? Arik didn't look back. Somewhere they can't find us, he said. Tapping the console, the map flickered, showing a glowing route weaving through dead systems. There's an abandoned mining world beyond the neutral zone. Scanners can't reach it. It'll buy us time. Cale looked up, his silver eyes reflecting the console's light. They'll never stop chasing you, he said quietly. Not until I'm gone. Arik turned, his voice steady but warm. They're not chasing you, Cale. They're chasing the truth, and I'm not letting them bury it again. Cale didn't answer, but his small hands gripped the pendant hanging from his neck. He could still hear his mother's voice in his memory. When the stars go silent, follow the brave heart. Maybe she had meant this man, this human soldier who should have been his enemy. Hours passed. The ship drifted through a nebula, purple mist curling like smoke. Then the engine sputtered, lights flickered. We're losing power, Arik muttered, slamming a switch. Nothing happened. Lena looked up, frightened. Are we crashing? Not yet, he said, forcing a thin smile. Just landing. Without permission. The shuttle descended into the shadow of a shattered moon. Debris floated like bones around them. Finally, they landed hard on the surface of an old ore platform. The ship groaned but held together. They stepped outside into cold air. The ground cracked and lifeless. Rusted towers stretched toward a dim blue sky. It was a graveyard of machines, but to Arik it felt like freedom. He led them inside one of the towers, the walls lined with flickering control panels. "We can hide here for a while," he said, brushing dust from an old terminal. "Maybe even repair the engines." Kale stood beside him, his pendant glowing faintly. "This place feels familiar," he whispered. Arik raised a brow. "You've been here before?" Kale nodded slowly. "When I was very little, my parents came here. They met with humans, scientists, I think. They were working on something called the Unity Core. It could give energy to whole planets without war, but the Council wanted to weaponize it." Arik froze, his mind racing. "The Unity Core," he repeated. "That was the energy source they killed your family over." Kale's voice trembled. "My father refused to give it to them, so they burned our world." Arik clenched his fists. "And they blamed it on the aliens," he muttered bitterly. Lena stepped forward, her eyes wide. "Can we still find it, the Unity Core?" Kale looked down. "Maybe," he said. "The data crystal my mother left, it's a key, but it needs power to unlock." Arik's gaze shifted to the terminal. "Then we'll make it work," he said, connecting the crystal to the panel. Lights flickered weakly, then stabilized. An image appeared. Kale's mother, projected in flickering blue light, her voice soft but steady. "If you're seeing this," she said, "then we have failed to protect the Unity Core, but not the truth. This message contains every record of the Council's crimes, the betrayals, the executions, the falsified wars. Take it to the Galactic Network, show them what they've done. Let the galaxy choose what peace means." The hologram flickered out. Silence filled the room. Lena's hand covered Kale's. "She's still helping," she whispered. Arik exhaled slowly. "Then our path is clear," he said. "We're not running anymore. We're going to the Capital Nexus. We'll broadcast this across every channel in the galaxy." Kale's eyes widened. "That's suicide, Commander. They'll destroy you before you reach orbit." Arik smiled faintly. "Maybe, but if the truth dies with us, then her sacrifice meant nothing." He began reconfiguring the ship's coordinates, but before he could finish, the radar alarm blared. Red lights flashed. "They found us," Lena cried through the cracked window. 3 dark ships descended through the clouds, the Council's insignia glowing on their hulls. Their weapons powered up, blue plasma pulsing. Arik grabbed his blaster, his voice calm. "Lena, Kale, get to the ship." "Now, but Papa, now." He barked, then softened. "Don't look back." They ran toward the shuttle as the first blast struck. Shaking the ground, dust rained from the ceiling. Arik fired from the tower entrance, hitting a drone mid-air. It exploded in a burst of sparks. He turned and ran, diving into the cockpit as the ship's engines roared. Kale took the co-pilot seat, his small hands trembling but ready. "Coordinates set," he said. Arik nodded. "Hold on." The ship burst upward through the smoke. Weaving between plasma fire, the old engine screamed but held. Stars streaked past as they broke through the atmosphere. Behind them, the mining platform exploded, flames lighting the void. In the cockpit, Lena stared at the glowing crystal. "We have the truth," she whispered. "Now we just have to make the galaxy hear it." Arik's scarred face hardened. "And we will," he said, "even if it kills me." As they vanished into hyperspace, far behind them the Council's flagship watched their trail. Captain Varys smiled coldly. "Let him run," he said. "He's flying straight into the capital and into our hands," but in that moment, streaking through the stars with the secret of a murdered world in their grasp, Arik, Lena, and Kale didn't feel hunted, they felt alive. Because sometimes running toward the truth is the only way to stop running from yourself. The capital world of Arendor Prime glimmered like a jewel beneath the twin suns. Silver towers piercing the clouds, orbital defense ships circling like vultures around their prey, and deep within that steel web, the heart of the human council pulsed, untouchable. Unchallenged, unquestioned until now from the black of space. An old cargo ship emerged from hyperspace, its hull cracked, smoke trailing behind it, but its engines burned with desperate purpose. Inside the cockpit, Commander Arik Dalen gripped the controls. His jaw set beside him sat Kyle, eyes locked on the glowing data crystal. And behind them, Lena whispered softly, "We made it." They hadn't come to fight. They'd come to reveal. But before Arik could steady the ship, the radar screamed. Council interceptors swarmed in like hornets, their sleek silver hulls reflecting the light of the suns. A voice boomed across the comm. Unregistered vessel. You're entering restricted orbit. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Arik pressed the comm switch. His voice steady. Negative, this is Commander Eric Dalen of the Border Patrol. Transmitting priority broadcast. Access denied. The voice snapped. You are under arrest for treason. Lena gripped her father's arm. Papa, they're going to destroy us. Arik didn't answer. He only looked at her with a faint smile, the same one she'd seen the day she shared her sandwich, the kind that said some things are worth everything. Kyle, he said quietly, connect the crystal. Kyle hesitated, his hands shaking. If we do this, they'll know where we are. I want them to, Arik said, flipping a switch. They'll watch. Everyone will. He pressed a button, and the ship's old comms array came to life, connecting not to one station, but to every broadcast frequency in the human network. The same channels used by the Council for speeches, propaganda and victory parades, and across the stars. Millions of screens flickered to life. Citizens on colonies, miners in distant belts, children in schools. All stopped as a voice echoed through the airwaves, raw and heavy with truth. This is Commander Eric Dalen, he began, his scarred face appearing across the galaxy. I once fought for the Council, I killed for them. I believed their lies, but today I stand with proof that we have been deceived. Behind him, Kale stepped forward, his blue skin glowing faintly in the light, his small voice trembling but brave. My name is Kyle of Anthar, he said. My family was murdered, not by aliens, but by humans who wanted our peace turned into war. Gasps filled streets and markets across the galaxy. Arik held up the glowing crystal. This file contains the Council's own records, showing how they executed the Anthar family, the same family that once saved my life. They silenced them to steal their invention, the Unity Core, a device meant to bring light to all worlds, not destroy them. He paused, voice breaking. We killed the peacemakers, and called it justice. In the Council chamber, alarms blared. Screens flickered as their network was hijacked. Captain Vera stormed in, shouting, "Cut the signal!" Technicians panicked. We can't, sir. It's not coming from one source. It's rebroadcasting through every colony relay. On the main display, Arik's face filled the room, larger than life. As his voice rang through the heart of power itself, the truth cannot be erased anymore, he said. You can call me a traitor, but history will call me human. Then he turned to Kale. Play it. Kale pressed his pendant against the console. The hologram of his mother appeared, her final message, her calm, sorrowful face projected above the city. To all who hear this, she said, we did not die for power, we died for peace. Remember us not as aliens or enemies, but as parents, builders, and dreamers who believed the stars belonged to everyone. For a moment, the entire galaxy went silent. Then chaos exploded, protests in the capital, soldiers lowering their weapons, broadcasts repeating the message on loop. The Council's lies unraveled in real time inside the ship. Warning lights flashed. 6 Council cruisers locked onto them. Missiles armed, Varys's voice cut through the comm, filled with fury. End of the line, Dalen. You've doomed yourself in that alien brat. Arik looked out the window, the capital lights glowing beneath them. Maybe, he said softly, but the truth's already free. He turned to Lena, brushing a tear from her cheek. Whatever happens next, be proud. Kale gripped the pendant, whispering, For my mother, Arik smiled faintly. For all of them, the missiles launched. Streaks of fire cutting through the clouds, but before impact, the Unity Core's energy, hidden inside the data crystal, reactivated. Light burst from the ship like a star being born. It wasn't an explosion, it was illumination, spreading across the sky, every device, every screen. Every ship in orbit bathed in its glow, and when the light faded, the cargo ship was gone. Days later, the galaxy changed. The Council fell, investigations began, and people spoke the names of Arik, Lena, and Kale as legends in a quiet colony far away. A monument stood, a little girl sharing her lunch with a blue-skinned boy under a silver tree. Carved beneath it were the words, Sometimes the smallest kindness can change the fate of galaxies. And among the stars, somewhere beyond the edge of maps, an old ship drifted silently, its lights faint but alive, a man, a child, and a girl looking out into the endless night. Still searching, still hoping, still human.